What's always funny as CEO, whenever I do these big workshops, it's, so I want to do AI. It's like, that is just, what to do AI.
Yeah, write it down. Okay, good.
Right, I put AI on the board.
Yeah.
There's so many questions of what, where, why, how.
Yeah.
Are you ready? In the AEC world, technology has never been more abundant, yet the return on investment remains stubbornly elusive. Firms are investing in BIM, digital twins, AI tools and cloud platforms. Some solutions promise improved collaboration, better decision making and reduced rework. Others promise automation, optimization and smarter digital workflows. And while the potential value is real, actual results often fall short of expectations. That's because much of the industry stumbles not on technology alone, but on readiness, adoption, and the ability to measure impact against meaningful business outcomes. It demands change management, workforce enablement, strategic alignment with business goals, and clearer metrics for return. Most firms struggle with legacy processes, fragmented systems, and organisational culture that slows adoption. Meanwhile, measuring ROI beyond cost saving into long-term capability remains a major blind spot. To unpack this gap between investment and impact, I'm joined by someone who's spent decades helping the industry navigate these exact challenges. Allister Lewis, an architect, digital transformation advisor, and the CEO of AD. He works with leading architecture and engineering practices to help them move beyond software acquisition and towards meaningful workflow transformation. From adopting the future software specification framework to guiding global firms through AI strategies and large-scale BIM implementations, Allister's expertise sits at the intersection of technology strategy, adoption, and value realisation. He's also the co-founder of the AEC Tech Jobs and creator of the AD database, one of the most comprehensive directories of AEC software in the world, helping firms, founders, and practitioners understand not just what's out there, but what actually delivers outcomes. In this conversation, we dig into why firms struggle to close the ROI gap in AEC innovation, how adoption readiness and measurements shape success, and what strategies are using to turn digital investment into real business value. Allister, welcome to the podcast. I thought it'd be really good is you work with a lot of global practices, co-tech founders, and helping firms with their digital strategy. But before we get on return investment and some of the key things, it'd be interesting to see when people actually engage you, when firms engage you or partners engage you. Is it normally when things are turning sour, or is it the beginning of the journey? Because it'd be just interesting to hear your engagement.
So I think it depends. I think all the practice I've done so far, it's different each time. And it depends what's driving them. So with some practice, like one practice, they had an advisor. He came on and was like, you need to think about this strategically. What are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to go? What's the big picture? And he'd done a whole load of work with them before we'd started around where the practice wanted to go and what that looked like. And then he got onto the bit where it was like, okay, how do you want to use technology? And that was our bit, and AI came into it. So they had like a very kind of clear view of what they wanted, a very clear set of requirements, and we worked through that, which was really great. Other architects, just at different stages. So they may be like, actually, we started thinking about this, and one of them mentioned they saw my workflow webinars we did last year, where we're looking at 3 tools, how do they fit together and actually fit within a workflow, rather than here's one tool, it does this. We wanted to show here's 3 tools, here's how they work together and fits into an office environment. And they said we reached out because of that, and we had more of a kind of introduction to conversation, and essentially we're like, actually this would be really useful to do a technology blueprint strategy for you, and we'll cover these things because they seem quite important. And then, other architects, they may want smaller bits, so that we just want to look at this area here. Can we do a workshop? And it's much more, I suppose, flexible in what we do, what we cover, depends what their needs are and their own maturity. So it does all change. And I think that describes the landscape out there of architects, is that there's small, medium and large firms, different sectors at different stages of adoption of technology, and different skills in-house, different challenges, financial ones in particular being a big one. It is fascinating because it just shows that the landscape is very uneven, and no one is ahead, no one is behind. We're all kind of moving forward at different paces, but we all perceive others are ahead of us, but that's not always the case.
And that's quite an interesting topic in itself, because I get asked the question is so-and-so ahead of us, is so-and-so ahead of us, and it's always hard to answer that. I think you mentioned there a lot of people have thoughts of what they want to do, or they come up with an idea or a business initiative that's generally driven from either C-level or come within the business. Be interesting to see on your engagements is when they approach you about we want to start this business initiative or we're thinking about it, how do you actually help them see if that's a reality and plausible? Let's say, there's probably people listening to this, starting their 2026 initiatives, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just AI, whatever that means. Be interesting to see your approach to that.
So I mean, what we've been doing is these technology blueprints, and it's kind of 6 to 8 weeks, and it's really comprehensive. So it covers hardware, software, infrastructure, workflows, processes. We interview everyone across all the different levels in the organisation, so we capture all that data. So that's a really nice place to be, because we can kind of go, we get an idea of where you are, and we know where the gaps are, and this is where to move forward. But like you say, with other clients, they're like, actually, we have a solution problem here. Can you do some research for us? And we can do that. It's a perfectly acceptable way of doing things. It comes down to budget, most likely at the end of the day, isn't it? And the level of seniority of someone to be able to say, yes, we're going to do this. From my perspective, I want to be in front of directors and go, I could really do a really great strategy for you, because I think we can move you forward and get you in the right place to adopt AI or streamline workflows or reduce cost. And we could probably talk a lot more about costs. But that's one of the key drivers for any practice is the perception of the cost of technology, software, adoption and training. And usually through the process we go through, we identify ways of saving money and also being able to implement what they want to do.
I think that's a crucial thing, as we said, budget. But I think people have budget lines, but then don't always talk about what we're trying to achieve with those budget lines, or like you said, savings or return on investment. So how do you approach them conversations with wider businesses? Because I hear it all the time as well, is it has to be within a certain budget, but then if we improve efficiencies by 60% here and you're on growth, then you don't have to hire as many people, or you could streamline, go to market quicker, reduce bottom line. There's those things that have an impact on budget or spending budget. So it'd be interesting if you're having similar conversations, I would say.
Yeah, so not quite sure how to answer this, but what we're finding, which I find fascinating, is we do these technology reviews and we go through costs. So we go through everything for their software, their hardware, and in particular IT support. And what we're finding is that architects are paying a lot of money for IT support, and we are trying to help them with that, I think, because I think the reason behind it is that it's a big unknown. Architects are designers, they're artists, maybe, they're focused on that side of things. They may obviously be good at project management, and there's all these different roles, but the IT side of it, when you get to a medium to large size practice, it's not something that architects typically can do. So you need to get someone in who is an IT manager, or you need to get in an external IT support. There are pros and cons to each route, but it does mean that your infrastructure is going to be guided by that organizational person. And what we see over time is lots of tech layering on itself, and lots of costs being, going up, and storage costs going up, and it becoming a bit of a runaway train, because you kind of like, yes, well, we know IT is expensive, so it kind of just keeps accumulating. And we're trying to unpick a lot of that and look at how a practice works in terms of remote working. Most practices offer 2 days work from home pretty much now. That, some are more generous, some are less generous, but there seems to be some accommodation for that. So you need a system which allows you that virtual environment, whatever that is. And obviously Creative ITC are specialists in this area, so that's great. But we do talk to them about that, how they store their data, what that looks like longer term, and I had a very long conversation with a friend of mine who's an IT manager yesterday, talking about risk management, and because you could outsource all of this, but you still need someone in-house who can manage, understand
Absolutely.
it all. So it's just very complicated. So
I mean, even on the data point of view, you just mentioned there is, you can buy a bucket of data anywhere, whether that's on premise or cloud or anywhere like that. But some people don't have archive policies around when do you actually finish a project and move it to cheaper storage, right?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, data's going to keep going up, models are getting larger, but also it's important the sequence of where you move that data, right? But like our industry, which is great, we also have to remain that data for 25, 30 years, sometimes maybe plus. So they're as you mentioned, it's a complex industry with complex IT requirements. And I don't want to make this too much about IT, but how do you help? Because I could go on all day about it. How do you help them navigate that? Because it's the same as what I experienced, right? We walk in a room with a lot of partners, a lot of them architects. They understand their BIM process, some of their workflows. They're now starting to profile a lot of their end users to help with some of that virtualization and local work.
Yeah.
Great. And they want to collaborate better on single files across country or regions. That's all great, but like you said, they're not IT specialist people. They IT now, unfortunately, you have to be a technologist as an architect. You have to be a technologist as a practice. So it'd be interesting how you help them navigate that when it's not their main job to understand it all, right?
Yeah, that's very, it's very pertinent. And I do find it hard to be succinct with things, but we put together a kind of, this is the high level summary, for a director level, this is what you need to know. These are the things which are important to implement, think about, make decisions on. We've got a whole report that goes behind all of that, and that's more for the people who do need to read it. So if it is an IT manager in-house, they can read that and understand that report. The IT director doesn't need to necessarily because, not the IT, but the director of the practice. So we try and keep it simple. We do face-to-face or online meetings with them, and the language is really important that you use because it's very easy to talk in IT language. Very quickly you can lose people, and I've definitely been on the receiving end of that, where I've just been like, I have absolutely no idea what this all means because it's a very different language.
That's probably with our industry talking to your industry sometimes, right?
Yeah, so, and that's also the same for architects talking to everyone else about their design and their work. There's a particular language that we like to use, we're taught to use, but in the real world it's not very helpful. And I think the people who do really well is the architects who can communicate in a way which people can understand and keeps it simple and go, okay, I understand what the relevance of this. And actually, interesting, because I've done a load of work around LinkedIn, putting posts on LinkedIn and sharing and testing and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And the language you use is incredibly important, and how you can capture someone's attention, how you can tell a story to communicate an idea in a way which resonates. It's a skill. It's an absolute skill, and it's something I'm trying to learn more on because it's difficult. But I think going back to it, talking to directors about their things that they can understand and which are important for them to make decisions on, because there's loads of stuff they don't need to think about, which they should be delegating to their associates, their IT, their BIM managers, their HR, graphics. That's where you want those people to kind of take hold of it and go, okay, I'll do the detail work. Because the director of a practice, you are leading the practice, winning more work, being the front, being the creative inspiration behind that. This IT stuff, they don't really need to worry about.
And on that, I suppose, change is hard for everyone, but when you're presenting some of the IT changes that comes with, I want to have better workflows or enable people to work from anywhere, or I want to use AI better, which means more centralized data flows or things like that. Whatever you have a discussion about, when you go through, which is probably not the sexy stuff, is what you have to change from a support and IT and a change management in a sense. Do you feel that there's quite a big pushback, or do you find that they find difficulty with the change because they want the sexy stuff now? I'd be interested to hear your feedback on. You don't have to speak anyone specific, but the common feedback.
Yeah, I think cultural change is hard, and implementing some of these things is difficult. I think it's about having a plan for what you want to do, making sure that you can try and bring people on board as much as possible. we have, I'm trying to think of the right word, but not ruffled some feathers, but we because we kind of external, we come in, we can have an objective view of things.
Yeah.
It can mean that's quite challenging to certain individuals when we're talking about their work, what they put in place. So it's hard. Change is hard. Implementing it's hard. But we're there to help and work with them and try and work through these. And these things always take longer than you think. And when I was working as a kind of I'm going to say a BIM manager, but I was as an architect doing BIM stuff and trying to get people on board with it. I generally went in with, I'm super enthusiastic about this. I think it's a really good idea, and try and bring people along with you. And I'm going to say 80% of the time it works. There's always, some people just don't want to, but we did BIM projects for schools at Hampshire County Council, and this was 2012. And you had to just go in and go, right, we've got Revit. We all use Revit. Let's work collaboratively internally and with our consultants and with the QS as well, and really take hold of this and see where we can get to it. And we made some small wins, I think, with that. Yeah. And as I say, being enthusiastic and like we can do something interesting led to some really positive outcomes, I think, in the delivery of those schools. And what we did with that, we were able to compare traditional CAD delivery with BIM, Revit workflows, and at the time BS 1192 kind of naming and numbering and stuff. And I think, I tried to demonstrate through fee analysis that using BIM, for whatever reason, they were more efficient and effective than doing it in a traditional way, because we could compare essentially 10 BIM projects with 10 traditional projects. They were all primary schools. It's hard to actually quantify and say, yes, this is the reason. But I do think that working together, being collaborative, working as a positive group made a big difference. Yeah. And, contributed partly to that, I think.
I suppose what you're almost doing there is showing a return on investment of, like you said, using BIM rather than another traditional way, right? But a bit like you just said there, we can compare 10 BIM deliveries versus a normal, and you can show the return on investment and why. I think what's hard at a transformational level, a business can't say, we've done 10 major IT transformations or 10 cloud migrations of that change. So one thing I speak a lot around is how you're going to measure success, because I think a lot of people don't know this, is you might do a whole cloud transformation or transform to a new way of workflow or whatever you're looking to do, but you never reflect on where you came from. Did it fix the problems? Did it drive the initiatives you did? And how do you measure that? And I think the measuring conversations is always an important point of, was it successful or not? So be interesting, because it's great you gave that example. What about the bigger transformation piece as well?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, because what we do is we interview everyone in the office. So we talk to HR and marketing and graphics teams, CGI teams, architecture assistants to architects, senior architects, associates and directors. So we get a holistic view of the practice across everyone. And what we could do is go back in a year's time and do that again and go, okay, where are you now? And we would be able to compare and say, well, people feel that they're faster, more effective, hopefully. Or they might say, no, we still have these challenges, and we might be able to say, actually, identify why. So that would be quite an interesting thing to do, I think. But I think that's probably, you want to try and understand where you are now and have metrics for that. And cost comes into it, doesn't it? Like, talk about return on investment. And IT is quite easy in that way to do it, because you go, well, the server infrastructure costs us this much a year and the backup system costs this much. And you could say, well, we could reduce that by going to a cloud environment, and it manages itself a lot better, and it's, it could be cheaper, or it could be more expensive, but it reduces all of that internal responsibility and cost. But when it comes to return on investment in terms of workflows and software adoption and things, it is harder to quantify, I suppose. But then again, we talk to these people and say, where are your biggest challenges? And interoperability is a massive challenge. So we talk about workflows. We design out the existing workflow and then go, right, this is how you could streamline this and make it better. Or it might be that we've identified you have one workflow when you actually need two, because you've got a master planning team and they don't work in the same way as an architecture team or an interiors team or a landscape team. So that's how we kind of look at it. But I think yeah, it's a note for me is in the future is go back and say, okay, how did it work?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
On the different workflows, I know tools is always a big conversation, and as application stacks get larger and the number of plugins that are associated to them, and I know through the automated data-driven design that you built, I'd be interested to hear where some tools are adding real value and where the market's overselling, and is there a commonality that architecture engineering firms are falling into because as they start increasing application stacks?
Okay, so that's really interesting. Yeah, so to go backwards a little bit, so I did a master's in BIM and I did a thesis, and it was about data-driven design, which is where AD came from. It's this whole idea about data-driven design. And what I started to do was collect software into this is just an Excel spreadsheet, because I kept seeing new tools out there, usually shared on LinkedIn, or people would talk about them, or you'd see a list of them at conferences. You go to a conference, there's 20 software companies there. So I started collecting this into a database, and then I had this idea, I'll create a marketplace and people can buy all this software through that. And that isn't the way that practices buy software, it appears. So I've got the database now and just made it open access so people can find these tools. And they are categorized by kind of major type, and then there's loads of tags in terms of lots of things that they can do within that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's around 1,700 solutions at the moment, and that's across AEC. And it's fascinating, and I find it really interesting. I kind of like to think that I've done all this work so no one else has to, because it's quite specific, isn't it? But you've got all of these tools, and practices are, I think, suffering from, not knowing which ones to use, or knowing where to start, or it's trying and exploring some, and then running out of time, and then not doing anything. So a lot of the work that I've tried to do is say, actually, how can I help the industry to adopt these better? So last year I did a generative design software, looked at 30 different generative design and BIM 2.0 software. I did a report and created that as a shareable resource that people could buy rather than paying for consultancy. It's actually, you can buy the report, and you can still buy the report if you want to. Link in the description.
Yeah. We'll put it in somewhere. Yeah, I like that.
So that was kind of like, okay, this should help people. And then through the tech strategies, we've been doing these workflows, looking at how they work, identifying what their workflow is and how it can be augmented with new tools, or we can take tools out of it if they aren't very effective and useful. The major challenge we have as an industry is we're using really old software, which I talk about being designed in the 1900s. ArchiCAD, Revit, Vectorworks, Rhino, SketchUp. They were all, from the last century. And what's interesting is we haven't had much development from those in the last 20 years, which is unusual, until the last 5 years, I'm going to say, where generative design tools have come out, and now more BIM 2.0 software, which are we'll probably talk about a bit more, but they're more flexible tools around web-based collaborative environments, taking advantage of AI and all of the new technology in terms of how they're hosted and made and more flexible. And with engineers and architects, we've got specific things that we're trying to achieve, and it's about finding the right tool for those. And that's where we're trying to help, essentially, is, through the database, if you want to, you can search through there, find as many Revit plugins that you want to, and try to narrow down how they can help. And there are a few that we really help people with. It's the same with AI and AI tools. There's a lot. And to answer your question properly, what I think is really useful for AI rendering and visualization tools is the ones which create a wrapper around the AI models. So lots of people have heard of all these different models like DALL-E, Flux, Nano Banana. It doesn't seem to like another couple of weeks and there's a new tool and a new model that people are using. But Xfigura and Fenestra in particular, the two of those have created wrappers to all of these AI models. So if they get updated or they're new, they just put it in and go, okay, you can start using it within our wrapper. So Xfigura does that, and Fenestra as well. And that's really great, because it means as an individual trying to find tools, you don't feel like, we adopted this one and now there's a new one. It's actually, I've got a kind of a framework, and I bring them in and use them as and when I want to, if I want to create watercolor or line drawings or text to image or model to render, whatever it is. And similar to Kia Regan Alexander, he's done the same with OmniChat. which I'm a huge fan of because it takes all of the AI models like ChatGPT, for Claude and Gemini and Perplexity, creates a wrapper to it, and you go, okay, well, I will use this one or that one depending on what I'm trying to do. That's an incredibly powerful thing to do, and it takes the pressure and stress away from you as an architect trying to find the right tool and be up to date. So I like that kind of approach. I think it works because the hard work's been done for you, and you know someone else is managing it, and that's kind of, I think, where we get to with IT infrastructure a bit as well, is actually rather than maintaining and managing all your own infrastructure in-house, which is heavy, it's a high capital expenditure up front, probably outsource that, put it into a cloud, let someone else manage that. There is a cost to it, clearly, but it keeps updating, it progresses, it's patched, someone's managing it.
You're not responsible for it anymore.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
If AWS is kind of managing all of this stuff in the background, or whatever the service is, it's taken care of, and you can focus on doing the day-to-day things, and your teams can do what they need to do because they've got the right tools to do that. So I think that's where I've kind of got to at the moment with it.
And have you got any particular tools that are disrupting the market? You're seeing most people are seeing some return on investment for. I mean, D5 render seems to be coming up against the Enscape sort of versus in a sense. But any tools that should be looking at it? And just the second part to that question is, when's the right time to start assessing your stack? Because I think one of the hard things is that, you know, there's a load of global architects that we work with in engineering firms. What's happening today is it's working. They are producing buildings and models.
Yeah.
They may want to do it more streamlined, more sustainable. They may want to do better collaboration, and that's what they're looking at these tools for.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the, I suppose, return on investment question is, well, the two sections is, when should we start looking, and then how do you measure change? Because everything's working today, so why change? And they're complex questions to have in a boardroom, right?
Yeah. Okay, so things are working. Yes, we can deliver buildings how we are now, but are we effective? Are we efficient? Are we productive? All industry reports say no. You know, the construction industry has productivity of like 1% year on year, where every other industry has gone up 5-6. You know, they have moved ahead, and the construction is lagging behind, which is partly why we're seeing so much technology emerge. Is that the software companies think, well, if we can take part of that market, the global construction industry is trillions of pounds value a year. If you take 1% of that, you know, that would be amazing. But they're like, can we make inroads into this industry and, you know, make lots of money from it, basically, whilst also solving a pretty huge issue, which is, why can't we build enough buildings fast enough? We need loads of housing here. We need loads of housing in the US. I think most countries need a lot more housing. The way we produce it now isn't sustainable. We can't build the number of houses we need in a sustainable manner with the current practices that we use. We know it's just not going to. We can't build enough fast enough. You know, in this country, the government said 1.5 million homes. They've been in power a year and a half, so they've got 3.5 years to go.
Yeah,
that's a lot of houses.
Don't think they're anywhere close either. So.
No, not at all. But there's reasons behind that. To do planning is a big one, and finance and all the rest of it, interest rates. But equally, we can't deliver off-site construction well enough at the moment. And the companies that did try to do that have pretty much, they went bust 2 years ago. There was like a whole swathe of them were trying to do factory and delivery, and they all disappeared. So the big challenge is we need to work better.
So I had a conversation with Alan Wahar and Dal Sinclair, and they're very much around this manufacturing process and the kit of parts, so sort of working back towards the architect. But are tools helping to do that, to almost that manufacturing process of building quicker, faster, smarter? Are tools supporting that to enable that, or are we still seeing tools still doing? Does it? You know, the tools are still great. They might make more efficient and design quicker, or do more conceptual designs. But is it still delivering the same output?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. So the answer to your question is yes. And conveniently, I used to work for a company called Cope, and that's KOPE, and they have produced a piece of software that will take an IFC model and then you can apply products to it. So if it's plasterboard, precast planks, SIPS panels, whatever it is, you can apply it to that IFC model, and then you can schedule out from that, and it will create all the cutting patterns for it, and it can optimize it as well to reduce waste. So when we talk about sustainability, we can reduce waste, which also reduce cost. So it's amazing. So that piece of software is doing what we need, and doing it with IFC is quite good because ArchiCAD, Revit, pretty much every software will export an IFC model now, and they can then take that in and start to do that. So I am a big fan of what they're doing there. So that's one example. There's companies like Automated Architecture, or they're called AUR, AUAR. Molly Claypool is one of the founders of that, and they are systematizing the creation of buildings with timber kind of plywood construction. They also use robotics in it. They seem to be doing they're going from strength to strength over the last 3 or 4 years. I've been watching what they do. I think they can do some amazing things, and it's interesting. They're going to the American market a lot at the moment because the American market is all about timber frame, plywood. It's all built in, so it's a really good environment for them to do that. Whereas here may not be the same in a lot of ways. There's other companies like that which are producing software around offsite manufacturing, but we still need that early stage workflow to get into there. Right. And I'm a really big fan of Speckle as a piece of software as well, because they originally created connectors between software. So if you're going from Rhino to Revit or Revit to ArchiCAD, I had clients who were like, we need to export ArchiCAD, so IFC from ArchiCAD and get it to Revit. And I wrote a 60-page document about how to do this, like really detailed. And I was like, oh no, just use Speckle because they've done all that work for you. Yeah. So the tools are emerging, which is really great, and they are starting to solve these challenges. And there are a lot more companies, particularly around offsite construction for, I think, kind of smaller house developments, which makes sense because that's pretty much what we do in this country, suburban developments. Yeah. If we can start to solve that, that'd be really good. And Facet Homes had a really great approach where they, rather than say, build a big factory, fabricate it in there, take it to site, they said, well, create a mini factory on site, have a CNC cutting machine that will cut out the panels, you get those plywood delivered, cut them, install them where you are. And it hasn't taken off yet, unfortunately, but the ambition behind that is really great. That's where it's about timing. Yeah, I think it's always about timing. The timing doesn't feel like we're quite there yet. I think we're in a flat period of construction. You know, what would you say? Growth was 0.3% last quarter. We are bumping along. Something has to change to kind of feed that, and it's going to be confidence, isn't it? Reduction in interest rates and probably government spending at quite a big level.
The economy, yeah. The UK economy,
yeah.
So I just want to circle back on a little bit around the software, and I know we talked off camera around the future AEC software specification that got released sort of 3 years ago or so. Yeah. When we discussed it, and it's designed to help practices assess tech more strategically. But no one's, well, except from yourself, not many people seem to be adopting it. So is there some key principles around that framework that people should start looking at and adopting when assessing their strategy?
Yeah, so that is interesting. So the backstory to that was about the letter to Autodesk, where a lot of practices in Scandinavia, US and the UK said, Autodesk, please update your software and make it fit for purpose. And Autodesk like, yes, we're listening. And actually nothing literally has really moved on since then. Yeah. The future AEC specification came out from that. I didn't have a hand in doing anything with that, to be honest, but Aaron from AHMM at the time and Andy Watts and Ian Godwin, they really put that all together as a response to that inertia. And it's a really great document because it's got 10 principles in there, and each one of those principles talk about accessibility to software, customization, sustainability, AI, and before kind of ChatGPT had really kind of like been launched, they were already thinking about AI, data use, privacy. So it's a really great framework for software companies to use. And this is that there's two sides to this thing. You've got the software companies developing new software. I tend to talk to them and say, look, make sure you look at this specification and ensure that you're meeting these requirements, because if you assessed Revit against those requirements, it wouldn't do that well. But when you assess new software like Arcole, Snaptrude, Hypar, some of the generative design tools, they start to perform very well because they're web-based, they've got AI, they've got privacy, they've got flexible licensing terms. So that's where it's really fascinating. And then from an architecture side, to help architects and anyone who wanted to score software, I've created a scoring spreadsheet where it basically takes the 10 questions, the 10 areas. They've got 3 questions per one, and you can give it a score out of 5, and then that gives you a score at the end. And then you can weight the scoring. So if you've got the 10 areas, this sounds really like esoteric sort of thing to go into, but anyway, I'm going to go with it. You've got the 10 areas, and you've got like one of them is about offsite construction. So if you want a piece of software that's really good at that, you can change the weighting. So the score of that software will be directly proportional to that. So that spreadsheet it's free on the ad website. You can download it and people can use it. So if you have software and you're saying we're going to look at these 3, you can use it to score those software. And what that should do is allow you to make a decision around the future proofing of that, so that you get pieces of software you can say, actually, yeah, it's going to work in the future when we have other software. It's got an open API. It works with other software and quickly and easily. So that's where that comes into it, I think. That's my hope anyway. Lots of people have downloaded the assessment, and it's there and it's open, and it's a resource for the industry. I will be updating my website to make it a bit easier to find and access. But it's one of the things that I use to score software with. So,
and it's quite interesting, even mentioning scoring software, and this goes back to the measure factor of measuring your current software stack. Where do you want your future software stack, and what's the outputs you want it to drive, and then the underlying principles, workflow, IT, all the other elements to it. So how often are you actually speaking to people that actually do that? Because my engagement is more from a tech level when we're doing large transformations for architecture, engineering, or construction companies, is they sort of know where they want the outputs end state, right? This is where they want to get to. They sort of know what they have from a current mode of operation in terms of how they run things, their current workflows, what's the pains, what they like to achieve. Yeah. What they really, really struggle with, which is the change, is that transitional mode. So how do you transition from, I know I want to be here, this is the outputs, I know where we are, but it's the transition and cost and change, and how do I measure it? And then once again, it all comes to, if you did all that, how do you measure return on investment for that? So how often are you speaking to people that are mapping the full landscape, or is that generally why you're going in and going, I'll help you do it?
It's one of the reasons is I've got a lot of specific domain knowledge now, which is when I started doing this 2 years ago, I didn't know whether it would be valuable to anyone, but it seems to be valuable. So that's good. It's kind of useful. I think that it's difficult. What we tend to do is we do these technology strategies, and then we support them after that with, okay, let's take a specific project or adoption thing you want to do, and we'll go in and support them with that. So whether it's kind of going through, okay, we've suggested these software for you to use, let's do a process where we assist you through that with either demos or talking to the companies or just taking that stress away, because architects, well, I think all consultants, whether you're an architect, engineer, interiors, landscape, you're under a lot of pressure to do the delivery work. Yeah. We know that work is
the day-to-day.
That's where their focus is. So I can do a lot of that stuff so they don't need to, and then come back to them and say, okay, here's the summary of what we found, before they then do more work and spend a lot of time on it. Because the conversations were, like I said earlier, we found these 5 tools, I did some research, but I stopped because of the day job. That's incredibly common.
Yeah, it's where I see innovations stop quite a lot, and people say, "Oh, we tried that tool," and this is even with AI. You see a lot of people playing with it, and you say, everyone's in a test phase, and it's very hard to generate time. But also, how do you take it from test to a BAU, business as usual phase?
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to use it. Everyone knows how to do the prompts. Everyone knows the application benefits. How do we get over that? It seems to be the biggest sticking point. You might not have the magic bullet today, but I ask is true return on investment is actually being able to see innovation through, which that transitional period is really tough.
From experience, I would do kind of small pilot projects, identify people who are enthusiastic in it. That tends to be, I'm going to say, younger, more junior architects, because they want to see change. Yeah. This generation of architects coming into the industry has spent their whole life with the digital technology in everything that they do. So when they move into practice, they're just like, why do we work like this? I think that's and that's where if you can engage those type of users and say, actually, what have you been using? What do you know? Do a skills audit. You can say, oh, look, this person knows how to code. They know how to use Rhino. They can do Grasshopper. Sure. You want to do more kind of complex facade development, for example, leverage that person to do that for you. Do it on one project, learn from it, do it on two, learn from it, do it on four. And that's what we did with the BIM projects at Hampshire. Was like, we did one, it went pretty well. We did two, they did okay. We did more and more as more and more people came on board. And usually when you've got something exciting happening, people like to see that and being part of it, and you can draw people in that way. And equally, it's less risk, isn't it? We do it on one project, let's see how it goes, and you can do it on a low pressure job, which is maybe smaller, or the client's not so demanding, or the timescale's a bit longer. You can give yourself some flexibility in achieving it. So I think that's how I would typically do it.
So like a champion user, champion project sort of thing, get people working on a project. Like you said, it's not time sensitive, and mind you, not many are not time sensitive anymore. But
but there's always some projects where you're like, well, it's not. You have priority levels, don't you?
Of course.
The other way of doing it is to adopt the tool which is so simple that it just works. Yeah. There aren't a lot of them around, I would say, but they are. The thing about all these new software being built is that they are built to be super simple, because they're like, we've got a new idea, we need people to adopt it. How do we do that? We've got to make it simple. We've got to make it intuitive. People log in and start using it, because we're competing against people who've used AutoCAD for 20 years or Revit for 15, 20 years or Vectorworks or whatever it may be. So Rayon is a really interesting tool, which is a 2D CAD tool, built online, collaborative. It looks beautiful. It looks like how we used to use Vectorworks 25 years ago, which is why I really like it, because Vectorworks went into more BIM and complexity, and it's like, no, it's just a really good 2D tool. And Rayon does that now. So that's how you get adoptions. It's so simple, so intuitive, and it has features which you want to use. So the big challenge we get in practices is we say, what tool are you using? And they go, we use InDesign. And instantly, they can't work collaboratively in that. It can be flaky. It breaks. You can lose all your links. You have to package everything. Not everyone packages all that software every time. So InDesign, I think, is probably a massive blocker. Whereas if you look at Figma's web-based. It can handle video, GIFs, images. You can share it collaboratively. It's a presentation software. It costs £3 per month per user.
All right.
InDesign is a lot more than that, and it doesn't work in the same way. And I used it at university in 1997. It's the same piece of software, designed in the last century. So,
is that fear of change then, or just not knowing the new tools that do it?
It can be both. Right, okay. I definitely. But it's also, we've got all of this stuff already. We don't want to change it, or we think the quality here is high enough that we're happy to spend so many hours on it. But it's a no-brainer for Figma. Miro have done the same thing. They've got a presentation tool now. My interesting story about Figma is that Adobe wanted to buy them 3 or 4 years ago, and they actually offered, I think it was like $23 billion to buy it. The Competitions Authority got involved in the US and in Europe and basically said to Adobe, no, because if you buy this, you become even more of a monopoly than you already are. And one of the test cases was they bought another piece of software which they basically killed because it was a competitor, and that's how they keep the market position. With Figma, what's really interesting, they said, we're going to buy you, and obviously they could then absorb them and all those features would be available. But the Competitions Authority said, no, there's a penalty clause in that. So I think to stop people just bidding spuriously for software, penalty clause was $1 billion. So they had to pull out, Adobe, and pay Figma $1 billion. Now, if you look at Figma now, they've got all these different modules, which they've been able to reinvest that money into the software and go, right, we do amazing wireframing web development software. What else can we do? Oh, we do presentations. Great, that's in there, that's amazing. So they've got all these different modules now, and they're basically building stuff because users want it, they need it, and they can do it. Whereas Adobe is like, well, we've got Photoshop. Oh, we've got Fireflies. It just sits, it doesn't move forward much. And it's the same with these architecture software developing, that they're creating simple, amazing software because they can. Some of them have got quite big investment funds behind them, in the millions of dollars. Like Motive has got $40 million of investment. Speckle's got 20 million, I think. Others have as well, maybe 2, 3, 4 million. So they're developing software. So architects will be, I think, silly to ignore that, because there's a revolution in those tools coming out, plus AI, augmenting it, behind it, implementing it as part of it, then it creates massive opportunity.
And part of that you mentioned is, the people coming in and maybe having more time, but being enthusiastic to play, right? The new people coming in the industry. And January's just happened, and if you look at, I saw some facts around an average turnover rate of an AEC firm is somewhere between 10 and 30% of employees, which seems reasonably high for industry. Now, you co-founded the AEC Tech Jobs, so I'd be quite interested to hear your view on if people aren't transforming, people aren't changing, people aren't moving to these new workflows and they're in the stagnant. Is that costing you good people? So when I talk about return on investment, a lot of people think about money, they think about technology, they think about infrastructure. What I don't always think about is the people that they've trained up maybe for 2-3 years that they could be losing due to frustration, for other reasons. And there's a lot of people on the market, right, looking to move. So it'd be interesting to see if you see a commonality with transformation and then people moving.
That's really interesting. So when you say 20% turnover of people in companies going in and
10
leaving,
to 30%,
within a year or 2 years,
within a 2-year period, so which seems quite well. I don't know if it's high compared to other industries. I'd have to look at that. So
I mean, I don't know this, but I know anecdotally this generation is better at being more transactional about where they work and moving quicker. I think within architecture, my assumption is because it's not a well-paid industry, particularly for newly qualified architects, architecture assistants in particular. That will be one of the reasons, because a lot of people I just literally cannot afford to work for this amount of money, even though we want to. I mean, I love being an architect. It's amazing. It's a great career. I highly recommend it for people to do it. But the pay is difficult. So I think there is definitely an industry issue there. And I think that does go back to productivity, and because productivity will affect profitability. And if architects are not efficient, they're not going to be profitable, so they can't pay better wages and they can't demonstrate to clients that they're more efficient and effective. The AEC Tech Jobs came about because I kept seeing jobs being advertised on LinkedIn. We need a front-end software engineer, or marketing, or sales, or even they want architectural roles in Contech. So myself, I set up a really simple jobs page for it, and I met Bragan, who's one of the co-founders of AEC Tech Jobs, and Stephanie, and he was doing the same thing. He shared new jobs on his Last Week in Contech newsletter, And we said, well, let's create a proper web page for this. And that's what we've done. So we've got a proper website, and we've got, I don't know, I mean, there are 20 different roles that you can move into in there. So like I say, there could be marketing, sales, customer success, project management. It can be software coding, BIM coding, some of the, or architectural codes. There can be architectural roles as well. AI, machine learning, software engineering. The list goes on. There's fascinating number of roles there, and what we're finding is there are lots of younger architects who want to move straight into that industry, partly because it pays well.
Yeah,
that it's true. They're well funded, so that they're not under the revenue model that architects are under, which is we get a job in, we can pay people to do that job, and time equals money essentially. In Contech, it's like we've got funding of £2 or £3 million. We need to develop this software. We've got 2 years of runway. Here we go. We need people to help us to achieve that. So that's that industry's emerging and growing. And Neil Leach, in his book, which is about AI and architects, he basically kind of says in it, I think he's being kind of provocative, but he says basically 50% of architects should carry on being architects. The other 50% should move into software coding and development, because in order to meet these massive challenges in the industry and to increase the quality of what we do as architects, we need people building software. We're not going to do it the way we do now. No. So he kind of suggests they should move into Contech. And that's kind of what we're seeing with these the AEC Contech jobs board, is that a lot of people reach out and say, I want to move into this. I'm a university graduate, or I have skills in coding. Equally, we want to attract people from outside the industry who are software engineers and AI and data. And we want to bring them into the industry to bring those skills in to build this software, because we need that. But it's a balance between knowing the AEC industry and knowing how to code. And there's a connection between the two, where architects in particular are really well placed, because there's a particular role called product management, which is the connection between the product and the development team. And I did a how to become a product manager document to help people kind of work out how to do this, what training to go through, and I'm hoping people found that valuable. And we'll be doing more like that. But that's where we are. I mean, and one of the reasons we've got this tech is that the big tech companies have pretty much conquered all the other ones to a greater or lesser extent. The construction industry is not digitized. It's not been conquered. So again, it goes back to them. They see opportunity there, and all that tech from other areas have come into this industry now and can be applied. So ChatGPT it wasn't made for AEC, but it links to what we do in terms of reports and generating information. So you can create compliance models, compliance software. You can do anything pretty much you want with all that technology. And with vibe coding, it allows people to build an app pretty quickly, just going, well, I want an app that does this. And you can use Lovable and Bolt and other ones like that to just create apps. And suddenly it democratizes access. And that is a huge challenge to the industry as well, because with greater democratization, it means that what we used to call lay people and non-architects, I don't know what we call them now, but that's at university, that's what we said. Lay people are not architects; they're lay people. Yeah. So I don't think that's what we should be calling them. They're just people. But everyone has access to software that can do stuff. So HiArc, for example, is very dominant in the US, it seems now, where they are saying, you want to design a house? Use our software. And that's for a normal person who just wants a house, and they will design the house with it. For architects, that's a massive challenge. It's like, well, where do we used to do that? Do we just become boutique, designers for super houses? Or do we actually engage with this and say, well, we can use this technology ourselves to assist the clients as well? So, HiArc Maquette is another one which would do that as well for end users. And then, like you say, you start getting into generative design and more complex, software. And the last point I'm going to make on that is that doing this generative design review, I looked at all these tools like TestFit and Giraffe, and discovered essentially they weren't selling to architects, they're selling to developers and real estate clients.
Right.
So suddenly they're going, well, why do I need an architect? I can do at least a high level on this site myself and work out what I can get on it using this software. So architects who basically rely on feasibilities to give them a platform to get into doing the full job. If a client says, well, I don't need an architect to do that, again, it's like, well, what does that mean for architects? So I think architects should be using that software to say to a client, we can bring all our design skill, knowledge and care to this, and we can do it faster, and we'll give you a full detailed output from this because it's really beautiful and well designed. And that's
without the fees as well.
Well, yes, but basically we should be reducing off. God, I shouldn't say that. Hang on, what did I say? we should be more productive. Yeah. That's what we're trying to get to. Yeah. More productive, because more productive is more profitable.
Yeah.
You know, we want to do 10 projects rather than 2 in the same time period. So we can get that to clients. They can make a decision. They can move the project forward. They know it's viable. That's where we want to be. We want to bring that value of design, of being, you know, we can give you all the metrics and the figures, but we can also give you a high quality design. That's what architects do.
It's a really good message. Look, I could speak to you for another hour because I've got so many questions around the most common job you're seeing that's returning on investment, more around applications, IT. But I thought we'll just finish with, I suppose, one last question. And you can answer it any way you want. It's quite open. Is if you just had one suggestion to any practice that you're working with or not working with around how to re-envision innovation or re-envision return on investment, or what to start looking at, have you got any particular advice for that?
I think it's being open to it. Just being open to it and saying, look, this technology exists. We can't put it back in the box. AI is not going away. We know that. So being open to it is like the thing is like, if you've got junior members in your team who say, I found a thing, it does this, I think it's useful, let them demonstrate it to you and
awesome, yeah.
and see the value of it. Or because if it's valuable, great. If it's not, fine, because that gives you an area to move and say, actually, we could look at something similar or better or adjacent, or we can give them feedback to that company and say, we really need it to do this. And that's I think that's probably it. It sounds
good. No, that's good. I mean, empowerment's key. I think the only thing I'd add to that sometimes is share from a business initiative or business strategy point. What would you like to achieve if you could achieve it? And then allow the people on the front line to find it. A bit like you said, listen to them, and then find a control mechanism of what does success look like. I think it's always a good way. So it's a very good advice is be open. Because we speak to a lot of organisations that aren't. So that's a really good advice. Look, as I said, I could speak to you for another hour. It's been really, really good. So thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. And if you want to look at some of those platforms, do reach out. We will try and put a link in the description. But honestly, it's been fantastic to speak. And I think it's been very useful for everyone listening. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Really good.
That brings us to the end of this episode. And a conversation that couldn't be more relevant for where the AEC industry finds itself today. As we heard from Allister, the gap between innovation and impact isn't just picking the right tools, it's about readiness, alignment, and being honest about what success really looks like. When firms approach transformation with clarity, structure, and the right culture, ROI becomes more than a buzzword. It becomes visible, measurable, and lasting. Whether you're leading strategy, driving digital adoption, or simply trying to make sense of a crowded tech landscape, hope today's episode gave you a clearer lens on how we turn investment into outcomes that truly matter. Thanks again to Allister Lewis for joining me and for the work he's doing to move the industry forward. This is the AEC Innovators Circle, where we speak to the boldest minds shaping the future of the architecture, engineering and construction industry. If you found the value in this episode, follow, share and stay tuned for more conversations that matter. See you next time.